as soon as Trump takes the stage. Joining me now, though, is former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, thanks a lot for coming on tonight.
Good to be with you, Tucker.
So what's the purpose of this event tonight?
Oh, I think it's partly to say thank you, partly, frankly, to get out of the transition stuff and get back to the people who made him president. I think Trump gains enormous strength from the American people, from being with them, from feeling their support, their strength, their enthusiasm. And I think that this is an integral part of why Trump is so unique. And of course, today, here you got a guy who hasn't even been sworn in, and he's already saved 1,000 jobs and sent America a signal of what kind of an activist, job-creating, job-preserving president he's going to be. So I think he's having a pretty good day.
So the purpose of it is to reassure people that he's going to do what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail?
And to reassure himself. I mean, I think, don't underestimate how important it is for somebody who is as dynamic and as risk-taking as Trump to remind himself, to feel inside himself that he is the leader of the American people and that he carries their hopes and their dreams and their wishes. It's a very important part of who he is, and it's part of what gives him this extraordinary level of energy that we have not seen, I think, since Theodore Roosevelt in a president. He's an amazingly energetic person.
He certainly is. So who's the audience for this, other than himself, as you said?
Well, I think all of the American people. It's a pretty good reminder to the Washington establishment that they're not just going to have the new president, but they're going to have a new president leading an army of Americans who really want change and who are really going to demand change. And he's setting the stage for that. He's reminding the congressmen and the senators from Ohio. And remember, the Cincinnati also is southern Indiana. It's also a large part of Kentucky. So that media market is being saturated with a reminder that change is coming to Washington and that the American people want that change and that they are for that change.
Now, you wrote, I thought, a really interesting piece about change and the challenges any new president has in enacting the change. It was based on your experiences coming in during the Reagan administration. And you said this: solving problems feels satisfying and is an easy substitute for solving the real underlying problems. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'll give you an example. We just have a horrifying story out of Wisconsin of a dentist who didn't take care of his tools properly, who may well have infected veterans with HIV, with hepatitis. That dentist wasn't fired. That dentist is, in fact, still working at a nice job at the VA, despite what he did. Now, you could reach in and go after that one dentist, or you could say, you know, this represents a class of problems that require us to reform the civil service so we can get rid of people who do things that are this destructive, this incompetent, and that actually harm our veterans. That's getting down a layer into a much deeper issue. And I think this is pure Peter Drucker. Drucker said years ago, all great leaders see problems as symptoms of a much deeper problem. Right. And if you solve that class of problems, and this is where Trump, I think, will be remarkable, because he has a contract with the American voter. He has a new deal for African Americans. He has really committed himself to dramatic change. And I think that dramatic change comes at that level.
Politicians do generally have a weakness for symbolic gestures. I think that's a really smart point. So the Wall Street Journal this morning had an editorial about you, and it, in effect, recommended what they called a Gingrich Commission. They said that the role you would play best in the Trump administration would be to think big about how to reduce the size of government and update it, make it more efficient, and make it more suited to the moment we're living in. Are you open to something like that?
Well, I think if President-elect Trump asked me to do something like that, I would head up such a commission. I'd only do it, of course, with his support and his enthusiasm. And I think it could be useful. It's certainly an example of the kind of thing I've talked about. I want to look across the whole system. I'll give you an example. We probably have a minimum of $110 billion a year stolen in Medicare and Medicaid, literally stolen. Yeah. Now, implementing a system that would save you $1 trillion over a decade by not paying the crooks, that would be an example of a large enough change it's worth really focusing on. And I want to go through the system and find those kind of leverage points that really give us the opportunity to dramatically improve the country.
So who's it stolen by the way? By crooked doctors mostly?
Largely by doctors. And the New York Times, for example, found a dentist who was doing 993 procedures a day and
that's a
billing
lot
for all of them. You know, it's a lot. It's amazing. But they also have guys who run crooked operations. They had one guy who'd been in jail for cocaine selling who came out of jail in South Florida, promptly went into stealing from Medicaid on the grounds that it was safer and easier, nobody shot you, and you actually could steal more money through Medicaid than you could get by dealing in drugs.
Yeah, it's an indoor job, which is good. But before I let you go, I want to ask you what the carrier story, 1,000 jobs saved, not going to Mexico, staying in Indiana, being criticized by many on the left as a symbolic gesture, in effect, and not really meaningful. Can that be repeated on a larger scale over the next 4 years?
It will be, I think. It will be because if you look at what Carrier needs, they need regulatory help, they need tax help. If you do those things for every business in America, all of them are better off, more of them are more likely to stay. But notice how totally whacked out the Democrats are. They used to be the party of working Americans. Now they're so elitist. They're made up of people who are so wealthy, they have contempt for 1,000 jobs. Let me tell you, there are 1,000 families in Indiana who are happier tonight, who have a better Christmas because of Donald J. Trump. That is not a small thing, and I think has sent a signal of hope to all of America.
Right. But what does it have to do with global warming? I mean, I think that's kind of the key question.
And there you have it. Everybody who thinks it's better to kill the jobs on behalf of the Paris Accord, you should be a liberal Democrat. Everybody who thinks working Americans and working families and a better Christmas, you should be for Donald J. Trump.
Mr. Speaker,
how's that for?
I think you summed it up. Great to see you tonight. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thanks, Tucker.